131. The date is 11/3/2023. We're in bargaining session number 16.
Thanks, Sandra. All right, Joe, if you have business that you want to bring up, I don't know, let's just, start off by, without giving you an opportunity to.
I don't have anything that needs to go off first.
Okay, go ahead. So what I thought I would do today is have a conversation about what our approach is to these negotiations. I think we had a conversation last time, I was asked some questions last time. I tried to sort of answer them as best I could. But, we haven't gone back and kind of talked to the city. I think most of what I said is true. And when we started, we articulated as our priority that we would have wage increases for firefighters in the first couple of steps. And then some sort of reduction of pension contribution for everyone. And that sort of has been our focus. Now, it's clear to us that, by that I mean the city, that we both share those perspectives, but you have other perspectives. You have other priorities that we might not necessarily share. So what we have progressed in our position is that all the firefighters at all the steps would get some wage increase. All the engineers at all their steps would get a wage increase. And that everybody who pays a pension contribution would get some relief from the pension contribution. Those are the three areas that are our priorities from the beginning until the end. Where that's not necessarily, I think, your priorities. And I'll be frank about some of that. We think it's important to put our resources into the firefighter rank and the engineer rank. We think we have to do something about the pension contribution. It has to come down. It's not going to come down 8%. It's not going to come down 6%. And I think another point that you made is that the people in drop who are not making pension contributions at all would have to have some kind of special wage action because they're not realizing a benefit if we reduce the pension contribution. And we're not in favor of that. We certainly appreciate their service and we value that. But at the same time, we also realized that when they went into drop and they stopped paying pension contributions, they had that benefit come to them. So they're not making 18.69% contribution. They're ahead in their paychecks by that amount. And so we don't think we have to make a special wage increase dedicated to those people, a dozen more or less, because they're not making pension contributions, so they don't have the same kind of benefit that everybody else gets who is making pension contributions. So our approach has been that we're going to continue to focus on the firefighter rank. Everybody in those ranks will get a wage increase. In the engineer ranks, and everybody in the engineer ranks will get a wage increase. And then everybody else, except for those in drop, will additionally, or if you're not getting a raise, receive the benefit of reduction in contribution. So fundamentally, our guess, buckets of money and benefits is different than yours. If you take a person who's making 18.69%, down 8%, they're actually getting the maximum benefit, right? They're getting more of a benefit than somebody who might get a 6% reduction. And we just don't see that. So, I mean, we're willing to entertain your thought that we set aside a day and sit down and try to knock all this out in a day. I think the way that we have been approaching this is that we come in with some kind of move every time, but it's not addressing the drop issue that you have. It's not addressing wages for everybody, just wage increases for firefighters and engineers, and the pension for everybody. It seems to be making me frustrated. So we're not doing that. We're not going to come in this today and make some small incremental change. We want to come in today and say, this is our view of how to proceed. And then we can talk about the numbers. If that's something you can do, if your position is that, no, that's not going to be how we do this. We're not going to accept any deal that has that kind of configuration of benefits, which might be what I heard you say last time. I think you might have said, we're not going to ever have a contract that doesn't have a wage increase for everybody. I think I heard you say that, but I don't put words in your mouth. But we can set that day aside, I think come in and have a contract, but I think we need to have this contract do those things that are important for us in this one-year deal, which is to increase wages for the people at the lower steps, at the ranks of firefighters and engineers, through firefighters and engineers, and that is it for wages, and reduce the contribution rate for pension.
Done.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, you pause, I didn't want to cut you off.
You're very patient, thank you.
So, last time around, we had some discussion about hard issues. Your hard line was that you felt it was your direction from the city that no package that we would move forward with would have the comps cash in it. So we would be taking that $500 off the table for each of those employees. You can say that you're wanting to utilize that wherever to make more impact in whatever different way, but it's moving this money here to over here. You said that that was an issue from your direction as you understood it at that point. We said that it is a hard issue for us, that none of our employees, we're not going to accept or be able to entertain a package that has in it a pay decrease for any firefighters. So when you're dealing with that comps cash, or whatever we want to call it, when you're dealing with that specifically, if drop employees do not receive any sort of benefit from a change in pension contribution decrease, and they're not given any sort of ATV or any other kind of compensation, and you're taking that comps cash off the table for them, that is a pay decrease for them. So that's a hard issue for us. Now, I'm more than willing to listen to information from the city to clarify why or how that may or may not be fair as it pertains to how the city is dealing with other areas of the city. Do you know of any other areas in the city where someone this year is taking a pay cut?
Well, first off, like I mentioned last time, in the last round of contract negotiations, that $500 of Comcash was non-recurring by the express language of the contract. So we don't really see it as being a pay cut. I would have a reduction.
Hold on, I can't let you walk away from that statement without a clarification.
Okay.
If a person today is getting X amount of dollars, and then tomorrow is getting X amount of dollars minus that Comcash, is their check going to be less?
Well, nobody, but that's not the issue. Nobody who gets a bonus, a non-recurring bonus in their pay in a year through negotiations, who does not get a bonus the next year because it's non-recurring, would say they took a pay cut.
Okay, I agree with you, but nowhere in the contract language is that referred to as a bonus. It's referred to as a supplement.
It's referred to as non-recurring supplement.
It's referred to as a supplement. So, the point being, you don't want to answer the question on that, and I understand why. But the simple fact of the matter is, if a person is in the drop and they're going to have that taken away, taken out of our contract language, not given to our people, whereas it was given this past year, you can call it whatever way you want to say it, parse it up. They're taking a pay cut. They're getting less pay tomorrow than they got today. That's just, it's simple math. I know you know that. I know you don't want to see it that way because it's not friendly to the city's point of view. But that just is what it is. We're not going to accept any contract that takes money away from firefighters to give it to other firefighters. Period.
Well, I don't think that's being done. Again, the Comcash is a benefit that's non-recurring. So when you enter into an agreement and you designate some payment as non-recurring, that is with the understanding, and that's what it says in the contract, non-recurring. I'm not calling it non-recurring, the contract calls it non-recurring. That means that money doesn't continue unless it's negotiated back in as a new benefit. It's like a bonus. Just because they spread it out over all the pay periods doesn't make it recurring.
Do we have any other supplements that recur?
Well, I'm sure you do, but is there, I think we're just talking about what the contract says with this particular cash supplement. It's not recurring. So, I mean, that's kind of our approach to that. I don't really see why we're getting hung up on that. We're not taking that money from 12 or 13 people and funding the rest of what we put on the table with it.
No, you're not. It's not that much money. I agree. It's not. So why is the city choking on that? It doesn't make any sense. It seems to me that the city's trying to make a point there, which I don't think that we should try to make a point by people's checks being less. Not giving them a fair increase, but taking money away.
Well, we've never seen, and I've never taken back an offer that said we can resolve this issue of drop people if you give them a $500 bonus. I mean, that hasn't been something we've seen.
Nor have we seen it from your side. But we have offered two packages where they would receive a ATB that was half or around half of what general employees received this year. We put something on the table that said for those members of ours that are in the drop, that we would entertain a package that they get half of what every other employee with the city got, minus the $500, so it's actually less than half. I think us being willing for certain people to take half of what other employees are being valued at is more than fair, to be quite frank. I don't disagree with you that we do have some differences in where we see the buckets as you were using that analogy. We do have the priority that we do feel we have a wage issue, not just at the firefighter rank, but on other ranks. But we are willing to make some changes in order for a larger impact percentage-wise to be at the firefighter rank and even a small amount up into the engineer rank. We're willing to do that. We also feel there is an issue, a disparity between what we pay in pension versus what our comps pay in pension and what our internal comps pay in pension, that being PBA and general employees. And we feel that needs to be addressed as well. Our initial proposals were all addressed from focusing on both of those to a certain standpoint and to moving the needle in both of those areas, because we have maintained the goal of moving the pension needle at a gradual pace so as it isn't disruptive to what the city has and outlays for our pension. That's why we took that approach in our initial proposals. The city was the one that said initially, no, we want to just deal with pension contribution decrease. We just want to deal with pension contribution decrease. It was your statement last time around that the city wants to fix the pension issue, so we don't have to come back to it. Right.
Right.
So, and we value that statement. I can appreciate that statement and that sentiment. We would agree with you that needs to be done. If the city wants to simply fix the pension, right? Simply fix that pension and us not come back to it, we could deal with 90% of a package dealing with just that, as long as we've got some impact for our drop participants. We could deal with that as I put a package on the table for you to entertain. But if the city's view of fixing that pension is to not fix any of the structure issues that we have with the pension, nor getting us even halfway down to where PBA is in pension contribution, that's not fixing the pension. We will be back to discussing this issue in February or March. So I would agree with you. We do have some differences in the exactness of where we see the buckets. I don't think we're that far off from where we see certain buckets. But we, I think, have a difference in what the definition of fixing the pension is.
Oh, I'm curious. I don't know what you mean when you say the structure of the pension, because right now the only thing we've talked about is the contribution rate.
Plan layout. We also discussed in our several of our proposals moving Plan D accrual to what Plan C is to match a 25-year max plan similar to what FRS has gone back to. We went to the plan that we have now for Plan D based off of the changes to FRS, and FRS has moved that back to 25 because of costs that they have seen in workers' comp, costs that they have seen in PTSD issues, costs that they have seen in other areas, based off of keeping people for longer periods of time. So that's who we compete against in many cases, and that's who all the other 175 plans base their plans off of. So we feel we need to go back to that. That's why we included that in there. There are some other plan issues that I think that will probably need to be addressed over time, but I don't think there's something that we would be looking to come back to the table next year to address. That those are things that we could probably go a little bit further on. There are some things, I'll be quite frank with you, that we're looking to have GRS, if the city's unwilling to have GRS, I'm sorry, I almost said GSG. GRS, cost out on pension issues to look at for next year, some things that we feel need to at least be costed out for us to have some idea of the impact of the pension, whether they be neutral or not. But that is the primary one that causes our people an issue. That is an issue that at some point will be a hard line issue for us, because very soon the majority of our members will be in that Plan D group.
Well, okay, to this point, our position has been, we think the contribution rate is high. And we want to reduce the contribution rate, which then results in more money that a firefighter in any rank who's paying the contribution can take home. That's, we're having a more direct, I guess, approach than involving moving to a single plan. It's another point where we're apart. Because we haven't put on the table to move to a single plan. We just had a reduction in pension contribution that would be equal for all of that plan year.
And we've entertained several of your proposals that have been based off that, and we've countered back proposals that didn't have that change in it. We, in the last negotiation session, we gave you 2 proposals. One addressed it and one did not. And we understand that if the city doesn't want to go the full Monty, if you'll excuse the phrase, but to go the whole 9 yards, and do what we feel is necessary to fix the issue so that it's off the table for several years, then we gave you an option, that did move the needle in multiple areas, fixes some issues for this year, moves us in the right direction. We gave you that on the table. We moved substantially to get to that. We have heard you speak at least 3 meetings about the approach the city wanted to take. We fully understand the approach the city wants to take. We understand that. We have a very good understanding now that you have a hard line for at least one issue, that you cannot move forward with a plan that has the comps cash in it. We understand that. That's why we put options in both of those plans. We put it specifically into one, and then the other we said that we would entertain that coming out as long as those funds were moved towards the firefighter starting salary and that rank. We are attempting to address your hardline issue.
Well, I think our hardline issue is this. Our issue is we want to increase the wages for the firefighter ranks and the engineer ranks. And then everyone else who makes a pension contribution enjoys a benefit in this 1 year by a reduction of pension contribution amount. If I said that about comms cash, I didn't mean that to be like that's our exclusive partner. We just believe that the priority should be increasing wages for the firefighters, in particular those in the beginning steps, and that we address the contribution rates for everyone else.
I don't know that anything that we put on the table has necessarily disagreed with that. We don't agree that people should take a pay cut during this 1 year. We don't agree that in the extent to which we change people's pension contribution rate or the extent to which we make impact at the firefighter and engineer rank. We agree with you, and almost everything that I put on the table has been tiered to address those items. Now, if you're saying that if it was misunderstood from our side that the comps cash issue was your only hard line, that you may have others. I think that's something that if you've got other areas where there are hard lines that we need to know at the table so that we can adequately match the strategy that the city's wanting to take. So if there are other hard lines specifically, we would definitely be glad to know those.
I think that's it, what I articulated today. That's why I came in today to have this conversation. Because we started the conversation last time we met. And as a result of that, I've had time to think about it. And I wanted to be clear. So that's what I'm trying to do today.
Okay, so, well, okay. I appreciate it. I appreciate the attempt at clarity. Are you saying that it is a hard line for the city that you will not be giving any sort of wage increase nor entertaining keeping the comps cash for drop participants? Is that a hard line for the city?
Through all these negotiations, it's been that we do not feel our resources should go to those people.
All right, so our resources, let's look at that. Do we have an idea of how much resources we have to put towards this? Because, as I've stated, the last time around, you throw out the phrase of you want people to enjoy a pension contribution decrease for this year. Well, nothing that you put on the table has a retro. So, the truthful way to say that would be we want them to enjoy this from December 1st or from the time that we put this into effect on, not for this year, because they will have lost what we've already lost in time for this year. Put that aside. As we discussed at the last negotiations, the package that you put on the table was around the 2.3% of payroll increase or package. 2.3. It's less than half of what was given to general employees. That's a problem. So when you say we're looking to put our resources in areas where it makes the most impact here for these specific reasons, I understand that. I do understand that. And our packages have been based off of similar priorities. Where we disagree is whether or not the city is adequately deciding to put resources into those priorities. That's where we disagree. Not in necessarily what the priorities are. We're very close in the priorities. We're very far apart in how much we think our people are worth for this year. I think that's what the problem is.
Well, I don't, we have two collective bargaining agreements that we're negotiating, and they're composed differently. Is your number for everyone, or is it by collective bargaining?
Which number?
You just threw out a number.
2.3%?
Yeah.
What we costed for yours? Yeah, that was everybody.
Have you costed out just what it is for the rank and file?
No, haven't costed out what it is for the rank and file. Are you saying that the city would be willing to give a 4% to the rank and file and nothing to their other collective bargaining agreement?
I think we offered an amount like that for the step one of the firefighters, right?
So, I think everyone at this table can very well appreciate that there's a certain amount of semantic that goes into our conversations. But I do know that of everyone sitting at this table and in this room, there are two of us who have a limited scope or limited understanding of what we do and how we do it and how it's laid out. I think that although you have spent a fair amount of time this year and 3 years ago for contract negotiations, there are certain things as to how our pay is laid out that you may not understand. And the simple fact of the matter is, even though we negotiated it 3 years ago, those who are at the firefighter rank in step one only retain that wage for 1 year. They are moved out of that wage. So then what you're looking at is they move out of that money into a 2% increase at step two. So when we're saying we're wanting to give our starting firefighters a 4% raise, taking semantics away, that's simply saying we're wanting to raise our starting salary by 4%. We're not wanting to raise what they move into by that much. We want to be able to have a little bit more impact at the number that we're able to use to recruit, but we're just not going to use that number to retain those same individuals and say that we want to keep them and that they're valued by that much. That's a problem for us whenever we're speaking that way. That's somewhat insulting to those people. I know that's not how you meant it, but it is. So I'm more than happy to go back and cost out that plan for the rank and file if the city needs me to do that. You have substantially more resources on your side of the table than I do, but I can do that. That's not a problem. I still don't think it's moved the needle one bit. I appreciate the fact that you've been willing to bring a restatement of approach to the table today. I hope since we put proposals on the table last meeting, 2 proposals on the table at the last meeting, that we would have a counter of those proposals today. So are you saying that you do not have a counter of those proposals today?
Well, our counter is that we're not changing from our current position. I could give it to you again, today's date, but where we're at for salaries for Article 12 for both units is where we were last time we gave you a proposal.
So your counter is to say that you have no change?
I have no change.
Okay. Is that your last best?
No,
Okay.
no, and I mentioned to you that we're open to having an all-day meeting that you proposed. But before we get involved in that, I think you needed to hear what I had to say about our priorities. Because if you tell me that's not going to be anything that you can accept, or a structure that you can accept, then, then I have to take that back.
The only thing that I've told you that we will not accept is a package that takes pay away or reduces the pay from any of our members. That's the only thing that I told you that we are unwilling to accept.
Yeah, but the last thing that you put on the table was the opposite of our approach, right? You had the benefit that went to the higher ranks, the people in Plan D, would be greater than what was going to be given to the firefighters at the
Which
lower steps.
proposal are you speaking of
The one
specifically?
that reduced pension contribution to 10%.
Okay, what about the other one?
Well, the other one also was a percentage that cut across everyone, which would mean the higher paid people would get more money.
A percentage that cut across everyone. You talking about the contribution rate decrease?
Oh,
Okay, well, the contribution rate decrease for yours has been the same as well.
yeah, I know that, but we also have dedicated wage increases to
Okay.
firefighter and
Listen.
engineer.
Listen, if the city is adamant that we must take the approach that the city wants, rather than specifically dealing with the needs of our people, I'm willing to entertain that approach. If you're willing to say that you're willing to go with a package that costs the same amount as that one, we'll put it in the same approach that you put on the table.
I don't know what you mean, the same as that one.
If you take the cost of what that particular plan was,
Yours?
yeah,
Oh, no, I don't think so.
Right, that's exactly
That
right.
was
That's
pretty
where,
high.
that's where the issue is.
Yeah, well, it was pretty high.
Well, I mean, the second one that I put on the table, if it was implemented in December 1st, would be about 2% more than what you gave the general employees. I agree, it's just over half of what you gave to the police. And I agree, with the current way that the city has been approaching this, it does seem like that's a lot for firefighters to ask for. So what you brought today has been, we have no change, here's our approach, that's your count.
Yes.
So, what would be the city's approach then, or reply, if I were to say, okay, to your counter, our counter is, we have no change, we vocalized our approach.
Yeah, that's fine with me. You can do that, that's your right.
I understand very well that it's my right, but we're not getting anywhere, Mr. McElmore.
Well, I would agree that we're not getting anywhere if we have put a particular structure on the table with certain priorities, and we get a response that doesn't recognize those priorities.
I feel your pain.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Absolutely, go ahead.
So you and I have sat in these rooms in other cities and counties, right?
Sure.
I mean, the people at this table, you and I probably been through this the most, and you probably more than I have because that's your primary job. And I've been negotiating with this local since 2001. I can tell you, I've been through some tough times, some times where it's taken a long time to get things done. This certainly takes the prize. This is definitely the longest that we've ever, in terms of just one executive session, past the impasse, target date. This is concerning, right? And so that's, I've not been to every meeting, but, of course, my interest with working for the IFF, the FPF, is to be here to try to shepherd a deal, right? And move things to the center. In my experience in doing that, we've never been successful when we come in here, either side, and we just take hard lines on the particular benefit, the particular group, the particular, strategy, whatever it is, whether it's firefighters and engineers, no lieutenant raises, no captain raises, no battalion chief raises, right? So what we have been successful with doing is when we build out a package of an amount of money, a percentage of payroll that we have to work with. The commission gives you, the negotiator, a parameter. They say, hey, and I use this example today. It's like when you go to Toyota and you're buying that new Tacoma, you go in there and you talk to the salesman for a while, and then they go back and talk to the sales manager, and they come back, they got a new parameter. Well, that's what collective bargaining looks like, right? Whether good, bad, or indifferent, that's just what it is. And so you have a parameter to work with, and the two of us, the two of you, effectively are trying to get to the middle of that. And I think that unless we really until we start talking about what this package, the value of this is, what this bucket, you talk about the buckets, what's this bucket look like, then we're just going to keep bumping heads. Because, again, we've got to get this ratified by the body. And the body's looking at it and they're going, okay, what's the value of this deal? I mean, we could spend all the money on starting firefighter pay. But guess what? Starting firefighters aren't the ones who show up to vote for the contract. Captains show up, lieutenants show up, engineers show up, right? And it's got to be, I'm in my 25th year starting next month, right? I mean, you think I'm going to vote for a deal that's just for one particular rank? Probably not. Nobody would do that except for maybe the group that's going to get that. It's discouraging to see us get to this point where, the position is that you're only going to approach it from this tactic and that's it. I think that's going to drag this thing on longer and longer. That might be the strategy from the city side. We get that. We've seen that. You and I both seen that in a lot of different, cities and counties than just Tallahassee, to be frank. But, you know, until we start talking about what that package looks like, and that package is something that's equitable, right? I mean, look at the city of Gainesville, just ratifying a contract with a D shift, right? You know, city of, you know, Pensacola, you know, South Walton, right? I mean, even right here in the Panhandle. I today driving here, I see cranes all in the skyline in the city of Tallahassee, right? Development going crazy. I mean, it's not, you know, I told you I've been here a long time. We went through 2007, 2008, Amendment 1, the recession, etc. You know, we didn't have any money. And so that's, you know, it's always been, you know, that's kind of always been the MO that, look, you know, we just don't have it. And so, you know, here we are today in a bustling economy with a growing city, with a college football team that's in the top 4. You know, that's bringing money to the city, right? I mean, so it's, you know, we can move past this, but I mean, we're going to have to start bringing what's that package worth, how much, what is that parameter, and we're going to have to work to say how, you know, with the white shirts in the room to help us to say, hey, how do we best spend this money? How do we best allocate those funds to bring this in for a deal? But, you know, until we do that, I think we're going to just sit here and bump heads.
Well, yeah, listen, I agree with you, and I think everyone needs to work toward a contract. And I think everyone should have a contract. And I will also agree that we're in kind of a unique situation as opposed to other negotiations we've had, you and I have been involved in. And that is traditionally at the City of Tallahassee, and this is true about the police this year, is 3-year contracts that are dynamic 3-year contracts. Sometimes they're front-ended, sometimes they're back-ended, sometimes people do not receive any benefit at all through the contracts, which is, and that's been part of our negotiations. This is kind of an unusual situation that we're doing 1 year to then set up a 3-year. And so what you're talking about in that approach, let's see what we can commit to over a 3-year period of time of wages and benefits isn't what we have. We're trying to bridge this. Frankly, not really sure why. I know that 3 years ago, the thought was, let's build an interim year into these negotiations, because these negotiations with the International Association of Firefighters tended to conclude before the negotiations with the Police Benevolent Association for the law enforcement, and that wasn't something that you thought was positive for your position. I get that. I don't know why we're still mired up in all this, because the police and the PPA have entered into a 3-year contract that they're locked into. No reopeners. What's done? Fully ratified. So,
You know, I know in a week, I think, right? We're well aware how fast that happened.
well, it took more than a week, but yeah, it happened.
One
pretty
meeting,
quick.
I
3
guess,
sessions.
Yeah, no, well,
3.
yeah, maybe, but it was also, you know,
But you were given
some of the issues that.
But you were given a parameter, right?
Well, some of the issues that came up in those negotiations have become a stumbling block in these negotiations. There was a pretty significant number of people who would have been at or above the top step and were getting nothing through the life of the contract. And that's something we discussed, and they said, okay, you know, we see that there's benefits going to some of the initial steps in a disproportionate way, but that's okay, that's good. We need to do that because that's what's going on in law enforcement.
Are you saying that there are people in the PBA contract that did not receive a benefit through the 3-year contract?
But some people that were capped out.
That didn't receive a benefit, didn't receive a pay increase during that 3-year contract?
But they were, I'm telling you that they were capped out, and they were not gonna see the benefit of the new step plan. They were gonna be at where they were at. for the life of the contract. So, but that's okay. Everybody gets to, that's part of the negotiations. But we do have this unique challenge of this 1 year. And our approach is, I'm not saying we can't talk about wages for ranks above engineers, that we can only do pension contribution reductions for a 3-year contract. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for this 1 year, let's do what we can do, which is to address 2 concerns: firefighters and engineers, starting pay, people who come into our employment and we want to keep, and to reduce pension contributions. That's what we can do this year.
Sure, and I'm telling you, based on, I'm here to help, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, think of me as like, I'm like the marriage counselor here right now, right?
Okay, good.
So I'm telling you, based on, and you know this, that the optics of taking something away, right? So you've got a reoccurring benefit in there. Okay, you know as well as we do, the city would love to just have reoccurring benefits galore. They'd love to have a bonus instead of an ATV in there for us, right? Because what's the difference between a bonus and an ATV?
Doesn't compound.
Bonus doesn't compound. A bonus isn't compensable for pension, right? So these are wonderful things, right? In terms of the bean counters. So the optics, so in other words, let's just look at the optics of it, because we're trying to get this ratified. This is the #1 goal of us collective bargaining, is to get a deal, right? Get both sides. You have your body that votes on it. We have our body that votes on it. We got to, when not everybody's happy, guess what? We got a deal, right? So the optics of taking these things away, I think, are going to be a big stumbling block for your position, for the position to sell this to the union, right? Versus keeping some of these things in there and making adjustments somewhere else. And that's your job to sell that to your leadership, right? Or your to the city folks to say, listen, it's the optics. It's not bottom, the bottom line, the dollar will be X. How we spend that, we may move it around a little bit. But the optics of that for us, for the folks that show up to vote, are that you're taking something away. And that's, that's just, again, that's just showing, that's the way we see it. That's the way it's being portrayed. And again, when you cost it all out, you know what we're comparing that to, right? I mean, it's, okay, well, you've given 5% across the board to general employees, right? So then if they're showing up and saying, well, I'm going to vote for half that, that's not enough. I'm going to tell my president to get back in there and keep arguing. And, and again, I mean, at the end of the day, you're seeing it right now. People are voting with their feet. They're leaving Tallahassee Fire Department because, if we continue to do this for another year, 3 years, 5 years, and we had how many minutes? 6 or 7 mandatory overtimes today. I mean, I travel the state, Michael. I know when I go to recruitment stuff, they know our pension contribution is the highest in the state. They know that our wages are below the comparable. They know that our work week is longer than the average. They know this stuff. They're not. When I got hired in 1999, I can tell you that I didn't look at benefits. I looked at where I could get a job. And I'm sure Chief Haddon down here probably the same way. You went, you got a job, you're a fireman, you worked there, you love the city you worked in. The folks coming in the door now, they're paying attention, right? I mean, they have the World Wide Web. They're looking this stuff up. They know where they're going. They're going to go work for a city where they have to work 48 hours a week instead of 53. You're going to go to a city or, FRS, they have an 8-year drop, right? Just instituted an 8-year drop this year. 25-year normal retirement again. So, I mean, we've got to be competitive or we're not going to be at all.
The
Does that make sense?
The departments that closely surround ours, Wakulla, Jefferson, Gas and EMS, the majority of them are FRS departments. The likelihood, after the restoration of the accrual, and capping of a 20-year plan for first responders last year, the likelihood is that we will have movement this year on COLA. If they receive a COLA back on those, that is the last chip we have in recruitment that is better than theirs. That's it. That's all we got. They get that back. Listen, I can appreciate that you restate your approach, and I can appreciate the approach. I think you would agree that in most of the proposals, at least every time we've come back with something that in some way deals with part or all of your approach, either looking at pension contribution decrease or trying to tier things down towards the bottom levels where it's flatter dollar-wise and bigger percentage-wise down at the bottom end of our rank structure. We have been trying to meet you at least near the middle of the table or closer to your side on approach than where we were initially. We're attempting to get there, but the problem is that initial bucket that you're looking to pour out into each of these little buckets is too small of a bucket. And if the city has more money to put towards that, to where we're somewhere closer we're at the amount of money, if you looked at the same amount of people for general employees, the same percentage of money of payroll, then I think we'd be a lot closer together. But for whatever reason, you've been directed to come back to the table with items that are at or below half of what you're spending on general employees. You've got to understand, you've been an employee. I understand you may not be an employee of someone right now. You do somewhat work for the City of Tallahassee, but I'd say you fairly well can set your own structure as far as that goes, and I can appreciate that. You've earned that. But you've been an employee at some point in time in your life. You know what it would feel like if your employer came back and said, hey, you guys are worth half as much of an increase as everybody else. You understand what that would do to the morale of a department. We already have a morale issue because we have people getting mandatory every week. There's already a problem there. Offering that level of compensation is going to cause a larger problem. Besides the fact that I can't get that passed. And I've already expressed that face to face with the city manager.
Well, let me say this. I don't come to these negotiations, I don't read these negotiations in particular, but any negotiation, to debate. I don't come to negotiations to attack. I don't come to say, this is what's wrong with what you put on the table. I really come for the purposes of listening. That's, I think, the first job that I have to do. Because I think what I do for my client is bring back what your thought process is. Although, so I'm not debating, I'm not arguing with you, although what we put on the table are increases in wages and increases through the reduction of pension contribution. We're not proposing, I know you keep saying this, we're not proposing pay cuts. That's not our thought. If there's a dozen maybe people in drop that are not making pension contributions, so they're not realizing the benefit of a reduced pension contribution, I don't think it's a pay cut. But anyway, and we keep hearing about general employees. We put on the table a 3-year plan that matched general employees, including this year. You didn't like it, which is okay. We've never seen any proposal that approximated what general employees receive this year. Everything has been substantially higher. Everything's been substantially higher, including what's on the table today.
So you would say 2.3% more than what general employees got is substantially higher?
Yeah,
Is that, okay, I wanted to be clear.
I do.
Because one of those plans is, one of the things that we put on the table is a little bit more than that. I get that, because it has to do with structure of the plan. But I would not say that 2.3% is substantially higher if you've got a group within the city that's getting more than double what general employees are getting.
Again, we've talked about that on several occasions. There was a separate negotiations for a 3-year plan to address certain priorities. And we're going to sit down and have a 3-year contract conversation with you.
Okay, well, let me look at this from a little different direction. I kind of spoke about this at the last negotiation. I think that we, both sides, have a combined responsibility to make sure that this department is competitive to a certain level with its comparable departments. I think we have that responsibility, and I think that as that has gotten away from us over the past several years in certain aspects, we have fallen lower in comparable to other like size or larger or similarly suited departments, however you want to say that. The numbers bear that out pretty clearly. Number one, as it pertains to us putting a package on the table to the tune of what general employees received. There's nothing that I've put on the table so far that you have not required me to come down quite substantially from. So it doesn't behoove most of our members to feel like they need to be the one to jump all the way down to where general employees are, because that really, in the end, if you're saying that if you agree in the premise that we need to be comparable or competitive with other departments, general employees isn't necessarily the comp group that we should be looking at. We should be looking at other fire departments. With that said, with any employee group, to say that, we need to fix the pay of this rank or this group, so because we need to fix the pay of this group, these others over here, you're just going to have to take less. That may make sense if financially you're not able to do something, moving forward in a package, but whenever that doesn't even equal what you're able to do in other areas of the city, it just doesn't make sense. And so it's not making sense to our people, right? So if we're wanting to have the conversation of moving our competitiveness forward, whether it be in the pension cost area or in the pay area or both, then we can have that conversation and we can look at numbers and go based off of numbers that don't lie. I'm not saying that you're lying. I'm saying they're not movable. Those have already been decided by our comps. They're already there for us to look at. We can need to be. We can do that based off of a 3-year contract if you'd like. Don't have a problem with that. We've put a 3-year contract on the table at least once, and we've told you since the 3rd meeting that if the city is adamant that they want a 3-year contract, to bring a 3-year offer to the table. Now, bringing the 3-year offer to the table, we told you that on the third meeting.
And we did.
Yeah, you did. You brought it.
If I could just
Sure.
jump in for just a second. So, and in this is when I go back to saying I'm listening to what you're saying. And again, I'm not debating with you. I'm not. But I want you to understand what I hear. And this isn't the first time I've heard it. I've heard it throughout these negotiations, which is we're not getting what the general employees got this and then we'll talk about that. And then but we're not the contract that we're going to start relatively soon. We're gonna have that conversation. So that's all that I was trying to impart. That's all I was trying to impart.
Is that I said that? I'm not sure what
No,
you're
just
saying.
that, when I said, when you brought up market, I said, well, we haven't seen, I'm sorry, when you brought up general employees, I said, well, we haven't seen a proposal that is in that neighborhood of general employees, everything's been higher. Yeah, but some of the stuff we put on the table might have been more. I guess that's where we're trying to negotiate.
Okay, so this,
But then I hear about the police, and then I hear about market. So it makes it a little difficult to, I think it makes it difficult for both of us, but I think it makes it difficult for you to be able to say,
okay, well, let me
this
clarify.
is the target, right?
Okay, let me clarify that, because you're kind of, what I hear you saying to me
Mhm.
is that if I'm pointing at the police and pointing at general employees and pointing at the market, that muddies the water and it's hard for you to know what I'm shooting for. Okay, well, let me clarify why I'm saying those things.
Okay.
Even though I know that you have more negotiating experience than any person in this room, to be quite frank, anyone on this side or that side, add it up. And you know this very well, that whenever you come to the table to negotiate salaries with a group of workers, you're going off of internal comps and external comps. And you go off of external comps to base your competitiveness with those groups that are similar to ours, other fire departments, right? So we're going off of what we're competing against. We look at internal comps in order to know what the employer can and cannot do, what they can afford, what they cannot afford. I'm not saying that our people want to be treated exactly as general employees. That's not why I've said that. And I think that, listen, I'm going to give you as much credit, hopefully, as you're due. You've got enough experience to know why I'm putting that on the table. What I'm saying is, the city's able to spend that here. They're able to spend this over here. They're willing to make advances in those areas. Why are they unwilling to make our group competitive like those? That's clear. Hopefully I've said that to help you understand why we've come at it that way, but that's why we've come at it that way. You have voiced your approach today as a counter to our offers. We appreciate hearing it again. We've still been unable to deal with any other article other than this particular article. They touched on the fact that the police negotiated a one-year deal in 3 to 4 sessions. We've not signed anything on. I brought you the offer to meet your concerns in one particular article. If you'll meet our concerns in another article, we've not had any discussion about that again. It doesn't seem that the city wants to move forward with anything that we put on the table, to be quite frank. There's several things that we've told you that are concerns of ours that you've never addressed in any of your counters. There's multiple things that you've put on the table as concerns of yours that we've tried to address in some of our counters. We are doing our part to bargain in good faith with you. And we're doing our part to tell you what our comps are, who we're competing against, where our numbers should be. We've brought you data. I've not seen the first bit of data from your side, period. Period. As I said two meetings ago. And listen, I think we're both frustrated with it because I think we're tired of seeing each other in this setting. And maybe next time we have a round table. But I told you 2 meetings ago that you've not said that our comps are wrong, they're not, you've not said that our comps are unfair, you've not said that you don't have the money. You just said, we have a different approach, and our approach is to offer you less. I'm putting words in your mouth, I'm sorry for that. You've done it a couple of times with me. You've been fair for the most part, as far as that goes. Let us take your approach and go discuss it, and see if we have anything to put back on the table today.
Yeah, that would be good.
Last thing I'll say to that, just in terms of, looking at the comp, the market, looking at PD, looking at general, that if unfortunately we end up in impasse in arbitration, what are the things that an arbitrator is required by state law to look at? We know that, right?
Yeah.
Nearby comps, right? Extended area comps across the state. The ability for the city to fund the proposals, right? So these are germane to all of those things, right? It's germane to what general employees got, what PD receives, what Pensacola and South Walton and Gainesville are. So, we're talking about things that we'll have to end up talking about in arbitration if, unfortunately, we end up in that spot. I want to, you know that.
Yeah, I do, and I don't think we will, and I hope we don't, but, I'm not gonna plow this ground again, but, no, I think we know where we're at, we're good with that.
All right, we'll step over into, whatever that number is. All
All right, return from caucus at 3:22.
right, so, we've discussed, any differences in approach. And we looked at, what we put on the table last and where we currently sit at the proverbial, we sit with an open square table here today, but where we sit with what's on the table currently. We've dealt with this before, with similar negotiations, in this cycle with you where, the city felt it was necessary to come back and restate approach due to a perceived misunderstanding of where each side was coming at things from. And we appreciate that, but however, I have to say that our team is disappointed that, while we put two proposals on the table last time around, I understand that you wanted to restate approach, but you didn't bring anything with numbers as part of a proposal today. And you could have taken some of what we put in our proposals and countered that with your approach. You chose not to. We also communicated to you at the last negotiation session that we would like to have a longer negotiation where we could sit down and not just deal with our issues in the pay article, but deal with some very real issues in some of the other articles. In your reply today at the table, unless I misunderstand, obviously you'll have time to answer back, as you see fit when we're done, but your reply was that you'd be willing to do that if we take your exact approach at the table. We have placed 12 proposals on the table. There were 2 times that we did 2 proposals per round, but we've had 10 different times that we've placed actual proposals on the table that have numbers attached to them. And the fact of the matter is, as we stated before, we went to caucus. The normal state of things at the negotiating table is to deal with issues based off of comps, based off of real numbers, based off of information that we can actually go back and forth on and try to come to the best solution for both sides. The other part of negotiations is the sharing of proposals. And while I appreciate that you're wanting to be clear with your approach and make sure that we don't misunderstand that approach, that's not a proposal. It's just not in our opinion. I know you probably would disagree with me, but, you know, that is what it is. I don't feel that we're that far apart as far as approach is concerned. We have made multiple efforts to approach your concerns in multiple different articles. We've asked for you to do the same for ours. What I feel, like we said before, is the difference is the amount that we feel is necessary to utilize in those approaches. To use your own analogy of the buckets. You know, I think you need a bigger bucket. That's really what a lot of it comes down to. And, you know, I stated before we left that somewhat tongue-in-cheek about the resources of the city. I think, you know, it's quite obvious that the city has much more resources than our organization. But at this point in time, we're not inclined to negotiate with ourselves. The city has our last two proposals. We're more than willing to entertain something if you're willing to put something on the table. But otherwise, you know, aside from you giving us dates or a date for an 8-hour negotiation, all I can offer is that you'll hear from us soon.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, negotiation session is